Matt, when I first met you, we were working in the same building, and I had observed probably your work ethic and your character, and I really was wondering why you were working in the position that you were working so humbly and you were serving so faithfully. Explain that period of time in your life.
Sure, yeah, and to be quite honest, I probably asked that question a couple of times myself. Working in that position at that time, as I have reflected back on those days, I have, a word that comes to mind quite often is just this unfun word that we call process. And, looking back over those years, if I kind of zoom out just a little bit, I remember, you and I had probably met prior to that at some point in time, but, I was just on the heels of 3 years of the School of Ministry, and I had approached that 3-year season as an on-ramp, a trajectory into ministry, and thinking that, I'll complete this season, and then, the obvious next step to some point or another would be into some type of a role within the local church or something like that. And eventually it did, but not in the particular role that I thought. And so when you and I met, I was working within the maintenance realm of the campus and involved in that capacity of things. And so I certainly had those moments where I thought, wow, this is not exactly how I thought this would play out in this season of life. But at the same time, as odd as it may sound, I can still look back and go, there was something right for me in that season of time. There was something happening within me that still needed that process to take place. And so, I have reflected back on those days on occasion, and at times just thankful for even that season of what it was. There's a lot that we can learn in those moments, particularly when things don't flesh out according to how we forecasted and hoped that they might. But process is an interesting thing, and if we allow it, the process will help build us to where we need to be, and really, if we allow it to do its work, the process will promote us. So,
what were your processes?
What were my processes? Mm-hmm. I think for me, it was a season where I think I was still needing clarity on some things that maybe I was needing to, like in terms of what maybe some purpose and mission for me, exactly what they were to look like. I think some of that was still working itself out, and I think some of that process also just included some life experiences that were to transpire during that season that I carry with me today, that help me in my day-to-day conversations and help me in just navigating the things that I do, even now, a number of years later. But for me, I think it was just it was one of those additional times where when life doesn't play itself out as you had anticipated, there's learning that can happen within that. And I think character building can continue to take place. I think even kind of getting down to a bare foundation of who I'm about and what matters to me and what this is really supposed to look like. And I think some of that even then just built in this additional bandwidth of patience and just allowing for the right thing to take place in due time.
And you were in your late 20s?
At that point in time, I was in my mid to latter 20s. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was 26 at the time.
And during that time, you also went back to continue college education?
So it was actually a couple of years later that I went back and my college journey. I joke about this. I took the scenic route with some of that. And so, we're going straight into college out of high school. I thought I was on kind of the traditional route of things, but essentially I had finished about 3 years of a business degree, and was planning to finish that out, but it was after that third year that I had the opportunity to step into the School of Ministry and decided that, felt like that was just the right thing to do at that point. So I put the business degree on hold. And so it wasn't until I was 29 that I went back to school. So it was several years later and wrapped all of that up and brought completion to it.
Listeners, we have Matt Huie with us today because he's going to have a unique perspective on relationships and finding your life partner. He has had a blessed life, but it has not been without challenges. I do know during this time he suffered a loss with a relationship. He is now married and has a beautiful wife and has a beautiful daughter. But just kind of tell us about what you went through and how it shaped you today.
Okay. Yeah, I was in my latter 20s at this point in the season that you are referring to, and I had started a relationship with a young lady at that time, and we were both in our latter 20s and kind of in that season of life where, if you're in a relationship and pursuing things that way, then, kind of thinking about things differently. And Cherie and I had met at our church and had gotten to know each other through just a variety of opportunities and friendships, mutual friendships, and things like that. And so we had a bit of a friendship even before we began dating, and so we trying to just think back on all that timeline. We had begun dating in the fall of 2010, and again had spent time prior to that together. But if you fast forward several months and find ourselves in April of 2011, at that point our relationship had grown. We had started having a variety of conversations and things like that. And for me, I was at the point where I thought, I think this is what my future looks like. I could see myself spending the rest of my life with this person. And it was April 24th. It was Easter Sunday of that year that Cherie had decided to go back home to Salisaw, go to Easter services with her family. And that morning it was rainy. We just had lots of storms that day, and she was en route on the interstate. Her car hydroplaned and veered off the road and collided with a tree, and that was the tragic occurrence.
Well, I hesitate to even bring that up, but since today I would like us to talk about relationships, I don't think you can talk about relationships unless you can talk about loss as well. You suffered a tragic loss. How did you work through that? What was your support system?
Yeah.
How did you grow from that?
Yeah. That was probably more of an extreme case. Tragedies happen in a variety of forms each and every day, and that one for me was a difficult season. It was a heartbreaking, devastating thing to have taken place. Believing, again, I thought my future was going to be looking a particular way, and for things to not only not happen, but in terms of how they ended that way, it was a difficult thing. I think when we find ourselves in particular hardships and difficulties and experiencing loss in whatever form that happens, we often have to pause and ask ourselves, okay, in the wake of tragedy, what do we do? And that's a hard question for people to sometimes gain traction with, because you're swirling through an assortment of things that are happening within your mind, within your context at that time, and I think one of the most important things is it's important that we do grieve. It's important that we do acknowledge what has happened. It's important that we process through that and go through it. I think oftentimes we want to kind of go around some of those types of things versus just walking through it. And so for me, I fortunately I had a great support system of friends and of family, and faith was certainly a foundation piece for me at that time. That people circled around me and helped me through that time. And like anybody who experiences just loss and tragedy in any sort of form, you're asking the question of why. Why do things happen like this? Why did this happen? And that's an answer that we may not always get clarity on this side of things, but nonetheless, we can begin to move forward. We can begin to take steps, and if we allow healing to begin to happen, and whatever form that needs to take place for you, then we'll begin to see ourselves take steps. And I think sometimes for me, I remember that's part of that season was you're numb in a way, and you're just kind of going through the motions of the day, and so I certainly think there's a period of time where it's okay to be in that space. But I think we need to reach a threshold, somewhere along the way where we begin to take steps forward. And like I said, if we allow it to, we will we'll see the pain that we have experienced in whatever respect that's been begin to be healed, begin to see some type of restoration take place. And again, that looks so different for different situations, for different people. But if we'll start to take steps forward towards healing, towards a restorative journey, then once we get through that season of things, you begin to see that you're even stronger than you were prior, and that even getting through it is not just for you, but you also find that now you are better able to help those who might be going through something as well. And so the pain that you've experienced isn't just pain, and it can be repurposed, and it can be put to use to where the scars that you have tell a story. The scars that you have are indicative that something has taken place, but that healing has also taken place, and that you are now equipped in a way that you were not prior, to be able to even look back and go, I don't know exactly what this person is going through. I don't know exactly what it feels like to be in their position, but I have been through what I have been through, and I'm even better able now to empathize with and come alongside you and even help navigate you through a season in a way that I wasn't able to before. So,
What was your step forward? Did a career change kind of coincide with your step forward?
To a degree, it did. I think I had a couple of things take place even before moving to Fayetteville. So after Cherie's passing, kind of, again, in those earlier months, just trying to kind of feel my way through that season, and just kind of, just needed the healing process to take place. And I think there were a couple of things. For one, it was just some key relationships that segued into my life. One in particular, who at the time was a counselor and whatnot, and when he reached out to me and just felt like he became aware of what had taken place, reached out to me, and so we began just having coffee together every week, and through his wisdom and through his expertise and just through his heart, we were able to really navigate that time to where I think I began having some traction take place and just steps forward just by way of that type of conversation. And I think somewhere along the way, one of the conversations that we began having, somewhere education came back up, and we were just discussing where things had left off. And so it was also during that time frame where I I decided, it's the right thing for me to jump back into finishing my degree, and so I looked at different ways which I could do that, and went ahead and moved forward with that. And I think that yet again was just another step forward of going, here's just another step in the right direction. And it was just a number of months after that the opportunity with CLC in Fayetteville came about, and I began to just felt like I was supposed to pursue that, and all that worked out. But yeah, I think it was probably 2 or 3 different things along the way that through a variety of conversations, relationships, and maybe even things that I'm not even remembering at the moment, that just one little step at a time help things move forward.
Tell us how you and your wife now met.
Yeah, Erica and I met pretty much immediately after I assumed the new role at the church. I actually was hired as the college and young adult pastor, and she was a part of that church already and part of that ministry, and she had moved to Fayetteville a couple of years prior to finish her schooling, and so our paths segued right there, and early on, I was really not necessarily pursuing any type of dating relationship or anything like that, but it was about 10 months later when she and I began dating. We started dating in November, early November of that first year after I was there. And it's funny, my senior pastor and I had a conversation one day, and I'll just share this with you because I think it's comical. But he stopped me in the parking lot one day, and we were just having a conversation about something or another, and only to realize that it wasn't really about that. He was really wanting to ask me another question. And so, but he brought up Erica, and he just said, well, what'd you think about her? And I thought to myself, well, okay, he's reading my mail right now. Like, have I, given signs that I was, and so, anyway, it was shortly thereafter, somewhere in that time frame, where she and I, we just went out for coffee one night, and the rest is history. And so, we were. So we began dating in November of that year, and we were married in December of the following year. So it was,
So you
relatively short.
you had no hesitation. When you were ready, you were ready.
I think I was at a stage in life. I was 30 at that point, and had I think I knew what I was looking for, and so over the course of time, just getting to know her, even prior to us ever going on our first date, and just observing and through just the relationships that we all had, just getting to know a person in that way. I began to just grow in my respect toward her, and so as we just stepped into that season of dating, it was pretty quickly there, at that point that I just felt right about that relationship. And of course, we were still getting to know one another, and still in that process of things. But I had a peace about her, and so over the course of time, of course, you introduce yourselves to each other's families and other friendships, and sometimes those can be even confirming voices for you. Where I remember introducing her to my parents and other friends, and they're all just going, "This is it's wonderful. It's a wonderful person right there." And so those types of things can come along as well. But for me, I think it was pretty early on that I just knew this was the right thing.
Not everyone has an outcome such as yours. Perhaps they jump back into something too quickly, have the wrong motivation towards having a relationship, or else they could even build up a wall. What made your outcome different?
I think for me, and I'm kind of just drawing back on what I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think for me, I think it was walking through the healing process that made the difference. if you've got a wound and that wound is never addressed, then the wound only seems to heighten as time goes along. Sometimes it might bring its own healing to itself, but it's never quite the same. And oftentimes we end up modifying our movement and our day-to-day to make up for the weakness or the hurt that's still not fully healed. And I think on an internal level, sometimes the tragic things, the difficult things, the situations that have taken place in people's lives, maybe have never been cared for. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, they continue to walk through life with that wall up as a way to just deflect and defend and not allow that hurt to happen again. And the reality is any relationship has its risk. There's no guarantee, mm-hmm. even if both parties are well-meaning and things like that. Things can still happen that are beyond our control. And so, acknowledging that difficulties, relationships happen in a variety of ways, and it can be messy and all those sorts of things. I think for me, what I at least initially think back on is just going, I think with the help of people, with a foundation of just my own faith and not understanding exactly why life carries on the way it does, but nonetheless doing what I could do at that point to at least go, I will never forget this, but the healthy thing to do, the right thing to do is to try to work through it. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me it as you're looking for another relationship like I was, you become open to that again eventually. In the back of your mind, you are kind of always wondering, is something bad going to happen? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, for me, I would look at it and go, there's no guarantee in this life, but I would still want to take the step forward and be in another relationship with another wonderful person. Even with those sorts of variables, because that person's, the investment back and forth that we've had with each other, that time together outweighs anything else. And I don't know if I'm answering your question as well as you're wanting there, but I think oftentimes,
Did you have any check boxes that you were looking for?
Gotcha. I think a lot of it was, you kind of have to boil it down and go, do I trust this person? Can I trust this person in my journey and in my life? And of course, Erica, she's a beautiful lady. She's got so many great just characteristics about her. We enjoy doing life together. We have a genuine friendship there that we enjoy time spent together. It's not a begrudging thing to go, okay, let's schedule our time, and we just naturally do that. We have similar things that we both enjoy doing as well. We also have different things that we enjoy respectively, but I think for me it kind of boiled down to, can I trust this person with my life? Can I trust this person with coming alongside me in the journey? And she's one of that, over the course of time, getting to know her, and even in the last several years of continuing to get to know her, she just continues to show that, that she was just a person of character, and there's no perfect person out there, but she's just one that I said, I could trust you and enjoy doing life with you, and hopefully that could be reciprocated back and forth, of course. And but to say there's a specific checkbox, a list of checkboxes, I don't know that I necessarily had that. It was just one of those where, the season and the time in which our lives intersected, just the right thing, the right time.
You had parents that were are still together, how did they model relationships for you?
I think, as a young boy watching my father, I began to notice little things even as a young guy, like Dad would just consistently open doors for Mom. Dad would, whether it be the door to the restaurant or the door to the car, he would be very purposeful in the respect that he showed. He would, even little things, and I'm not trying to give away their the things that are just special to them, but like
Yes,
even little
yes.
notes and things like that he would leave around the house that he knew Mom would eventually see at some point in the day while he was out. Some of those things begin to happen in just those small glimpses. And so that kind of gave me just indicators of like, Dad does a lot of these sorts of things, but it's very purposeful. It's an expression of love, and it's there's these little tidbits of their relationship. But on a broader family level, I think my parents really they really purpose to spend time together with both my brother and I, and that our family would be a unit, and that the things that matter to us as a family, the things that were core ingredients of us would they put time and attention into those things, and so there's no perfect couple, there's no perfect family or situation or anything like that, but I think that they've really done a great job of just navigating life together, making decisions together. For them, faith is also just a core foundation piece, and keeping that out in front of things, and just watching how they have respected one another over the years, how they've treated one another, and just some of the decisions that I know that they made along the years that were with my brother and I's best interest in mind, and looking back on those and going that that decision may have cost them a little bit on their end of things, but it did my brother and I well at that time. And so even not knowing exactly what was happening 20, 30 years ago at those moments, now being able to look back in hindsight and just see those types of things and appreciate them to another degree.
During your time as a youth and young adult pastor, I know you had to see different styles of family. What was your role in molding young men or women to make wise decisions in their relationships?
Sometimes it is just reminding that particular teenager or young adult of their value. Sometimes we make decisions through the lens of who we think we are and what we think we're worth, and we allow or disallow particular people or things into our lives based on that kind of a filter. And sometimes the conversations are just reminding them to going, you don't have to settle for that. That doesn't have to be the path. That doesn't have to be the outcome. Let me tell you some things that I have seen of you, some things that I have noticed about you, some things that maybe you don't even realize and recognize are within you. And also acknowledging that their life experience up to that point has been what it is, and not trying to disregard that, but trying to take all that into mind as you are trying to navigate those conversations. I think sometimes we can feel like we just need to pick up from where they are and then move forward without acknowledging all that has already taken place. And I think you have to do that first before you can really help somebody take the next step with some things. And so many of those conversations probably boiled down to those types of things, and they happened in a variety of forms and in a variety of ways. But one of the things I love to do the most is just sit down across the table from somebody and help them navigate through a season of life, and help them navigate through just even a decision, navigate through, a particular circumstance that's going on.
What if someone doesn't have that?
What if someone doesn't have that?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question.
Because I don't think a lot of people do.
That's a great question, and you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I think sometimes, well, there's a couple of ways I guess I could think about that. But to your point, no, you're right. There's a lot of that lacking in our world, and sometimes there are outlets that can be that we can reach out to. That would be an outlet of help. Sometimes people don't feel comfortable doing that. Sometimes they don't feel worthy of even asking for help or whatever it may be. Sometimes it just depends on the situation and on the person. But I think what we can do just as people in general, and regardless of whatever your field of expertise is, regardless of even what your life has looked like up to this point, I think one of the things that we can all begin to do, or just continue to do, is allow ourselves to be just a friend to somebody. Oftentimes, people are just looking for a friend. They may not even be looking for you to be the answer or the problem solver, as much as they're just looking for somebody that can listen. And I think one thing that we can just generally do is in our day-to-days, in our workplaces, in our spheres of influence, even just in our brief encounters with people, I think it's just, how can I show kindness to that particular person today? How is it that I can serve them today in whatever capacity? And I think if just more of the general population would keep some of that in mind, which is easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
then some of that begin to change a little bit.
Be more interactive
Mm-hmm.
with one another. You met your wife. You weren't concerned about what your profile picture looked like on Facebook or Instagram, and she probably didn't either. But that is a culture that we're living in now. You hope to attract someone through appearance.
Right.
Let's talk about getting to know someone and being genuine, so that you don't have surprises later on in the relationship. Being genuine from the start of who you are and what's in your heart. No fake advertising.
Okay. Yeah. We definitely live in a world where.
Don't you love how I just took you right off?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that. We definitely live in a world where, Instagram is largely the highlight reel of our lives. Mm-hmm. Our profile pictures are the right angle and the right lighting at the right time on the best hair day or whatever it may be of our lives. And really, we're just giving people the top 10 plays, and it's the best of what happened that day. It's the best of what happened that week, whatever it may be. And the truth of it is that life is lived out more so in the very common and the very normal and the very up and down and the very unpredictable moments of life. Life is lived out in every other moment other than that profile picture moment usually. And it doesn't mean that picture is not an indicator of what is overall happening in your life, but I think oftentimes we do use that as a way to it's okay to put your best foot forward and all that kind of a thing, but to let that be the only depth that we give or allow people into is really missing out on who that person really is, because we as people we have a lot going on, and every one of us have had, we're many layers deep, and I think the beauty in relationships and whether that be a friendship, whether that be a spouse or whatever. The beauty of relationships is that you really get to know the person as you get to know all of the details of things. And it's not in that way of trying to just be too involved in one's life, but I think to really get to know the heart and the depth and the true core of who a person is, that involves both great things and also tough things. And so I think to truly appreciate a person, to truly understand who they are, what makes them tick, and to love who they really genuinely are, it requires all those components.
How do you lead your family?
How do I lead my family? A day at a time, some days. Imperfectly. But I... I try to show up every day. Just try to show up every day. And one of the things that I have continued to work on is just being present in the moment. I think so much of leading just in general requires us to be present and cognizant of what's taking place in the room. And we're within the group of people that we're leading or caring for, and that I think the same goes for family. And so every day I do my best to just show up and be present and to be engaged with my wife, be engaged with my daughter, be involved in what's going on. There's some things that are important to us as a family that we continue to try to make the foundational pieces of our lives. And so I continue to, we try to implement those and make those like, this is what we'll stand on, and this is who we are and what we want to be. But just me personally, it's just trying to be faithful to the day to day, trying to obviously do the things that I can do on the practical levels of provision and making sure that they have what they need. But my wife and I both work, and so we tag team that aspect of things together as well. But I think for me, it's you got to identify, what are the things that matter to us as a family, and what is my role in implementing that, and making that a part of our lives, but I think just on a general but yet more pointed level, it's being present and being involved in what's going on. It's the communication that needs to take place with your spouse or with your kids or with whomever, and just being faithful in the day to day.
I want to quote you from a teaching that you gave a couple of weeks ago at Christian Life Cathedral. And you said, "What does it look like for us to reach a world that doesn't speak the same language as we do, doesn't act like we do, may not talk like we do, may not look like we do? How do you want to reach the world, and what impact do you want to have on it?"
Well, I think for me, I'll term it this way: life is a collection of seasons, and each season can have its own assignment, and the way in which we go about fulfilling that assignment can vary from season to season. But I kind of, on a very simplistic level, I feel like I'm supposed to help. I enjoy helping people, and right now the way I'm helping people is I'm working at a local church, and I'm doing my best to help facilitate the things that need to take place within that organization and in the day to day, but really it's all about how does that impact people, and so that's the way things are carrying out for me now, and that may go on for years and years to come, but we'll see. But I think for me it's also,
What do you think has the greatest impact on people?
what I think has the greatest impact?
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're willing to, I think when you're just willing to show somebody you actually care. And I'm not trying to be too elementary
Mm-hmm.
with it. I think so many people are looking for someone who actually cares about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of conversations where I'm trying to fix something. I'm hearing a situation and I'm immediately trying to fix it. And oftentimes they're not necessarily asking for me to fix it. Sometimes they're just asking for me to, hey, can you create this space where I can just be who I am, and what is happening in my life can just be happening, and can this be a safe space? And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Not necessarily all the time, but I've had plenty of conversations that it kind of went that way. And then at the same time, being able to go, okay, well, let's take all this into consideration, and then let's see what the next step looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on a personal level for me, I love helping people understand where they are, what's taking place, and let's sort through it. But let's also see what does it look like to take the next step forward. But I think oftentimes that just requires sitting down, hearing, listening, and caring about what's happening.
I want to give you the floor for the next several minutes, and I just want you to talk about what you learned along the way in finding your life partner.
What I learned along the way. Well, Erica has been just such a gift to me, and I probably don't say it to her enough, but just how thankful I am for her. And I think some of the things that some life experiences that happen, and I think anybody can hopefully just apply this to their own journey. But I think life can throw some things at you, both good and bad. And just boiling back to me personally, to be in the season that I'm in right now, I look back at the last number of years, and I can all the more appreciate where I am right now because of what I've experienced. And I think, more on a day-to-day level, it's so easy to get caught up in all the stuff that's happening in life and all the things that there is to be stressed about and worried about, and my brain is super analytical, so it has an easy time just delving into the matter at hand, and let's sort through it and overanalyze it and all those sorts of fun things. But when you really just kind of get things down to a foundational level, I can continually reminded about the things that just really truly matter and that are lasting. And I think some of the things that I have learned along the way would maybe be termed like just really appreciating the moments and really appreciating what life offers in those little snapshots of time that are of lasting value. With Erica, I think I may have mentioned some of this earlier. There's some qualities about her that I so love and appreciate, and that those are the kind of the foundation of who she is, and at the same time, as lives merge together, you sort through challenges and you have disagreements on things and whatnot, but one big thing for us is just to continue to communicate about it. You got to talk about it. You can't just box it away and pretend like that didn't exist. You got to talk through it and go ahead and allow that to be worked out. But I guess all that to say is like within all the happenings of life, I think it comes back down to just remembering the value of the person who you're doing life with, and speaking that to them. And I think even my journey so far has hopefully I've got even a deeper appreciation for, like I said, this season that I'm in.
What would you say to someone who is in a season of extreme loneliness or extreme hurt or extreme grief?
It's a big question. I think, and I often will tell people this, that I don't pretend to know how you feel. I have been through my own journey and my own set of challenges, but yours is your own, and so without pretending to know exactly how you feel, I would also just, for one, I would ask, is there anybody? Do you have any particular person in your life? Is there any particular relationship? Is there any outlet? Whether that's a counseling center, whether that's a church, whether that's just an organization of that you would trust in some regard or another that you could reach out to? Is there a step that you could take that, if people are not aware of what's going on within your world, is there a way that you can make them aware and invite a safe voice into that conversation? Sometimes we expect people to know what is happening within our inner world, and they can't always do that unless we give them a glimpse of that. And so I would just ask if that's a possibility, consider extending a conversation to somebody to come alongside you. But I guess I would also look at it and just from a personal heart level say, I'm so sorry that that's what's happening right now for whatever reason. I wish that were not the case. But I can also believe that doesn't have to be the rest of your story. That there can be another chapter, that there can be better days, and that the time that you're in right now is hard. But if you allow it, then it doesn't have to remain hard, and it doesn't have to remain hard and with no purpose. And that there can be hope on the other side of this. And I know there's so many dynamics, because my head just starts going through so many different situations of people and lives and circumstances. But this doesn't have to be the end of the story for you.
Thank you, Matt.
It's been my honor. Thank you.